convention I went to was in September 19th in Montreal. Now, it was a great Comic Con. I met Boba Fett, I met Lou Ferrigno, I met Greedo, I met a bunch of artists, and it was all good. Videos. Anyway, so one thing I did when I was there, I submitted 2 books to CGC. Now, there's a lot of speculation about CGC. Is it worth doing? Can I cash in on my comics right away? What kind of books should I buy? What's the difference between a 9.4 and a 9.6, or a 9.6 and a 9.8, and so on and so forth. Now, in the last so many years, could be wrong, there have been a lot of CGC books popping up for sale. There's an extra like 2-3 pages at the back of the Wizard devoted to CGC comic prices. You can go on gpanalysis.com and look up all the CG comic prices to keep up with the market. So this entity, this being, has grown, and a lot of comic fans like it. A lot of them don't like it, and there's speculation as to whether it's worth it or not. So me being a fan, I always knew Raw would be cheaper. However, it's true that if you buy a book, your very good might be my fine minus might be someone else's VG plus. I mean, you've got good, then you've got very good, then you've got fine, and you've got very fine, and then you've got near mint, mint, and in between all that you have whatever, plus, minus. So, in that sense, having a normalized standard for grading is good for the comic consumer, the buyer, when purchasing a vintage comic, to know exactly what condition he or she is getting the book in, and in that sense understand the price that he or she is paying. And I know I just rambled for whatever, but anyway, the point is, I had one book that was damaged. I gave it for reslabbing, and I gave a book for grading just to see why not. So first thing they make you do is fill out this form, and then it's $17 to grade a modern book, $11 to reslab a book, any book. There's a sliding scale as to how much you'll pay to grade an older book, because older books are generally worth more. And you pay a $60 shipping charge. It's FedEx ground. Now, I think in the States it's domestic, so it's cheaper, but since I'm in Canada and CGC is located in the States, it costs a little more. I submitted this to a convention in Montreal because a representative from CG was there who works with a comic company, a comic shop in Ontario. So you submit the books, you fill out a form, you pay what they charge you on your credit card, $60 to ship, blah, 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 5 weeks processing, and get the books back and all that. So anyway, I've talked enough. So I've shown this book way too many times, and I'm not going to keep going on and on about it, but basically these corners, when I first bought this book, were all damaged, which sucks in a sense. I mean, this has fantastic eye appeal, cover appeal. It's light tan, has a date stamp right there, which kills the value, the grade of the book, but I wanted an intact copy. I've seen copies of this book all like shredded and stuff, selling for more than I paid for this, and I didn't want that. So if the only way for me to get a book that was intact was to get it graded, hey, whatever, but at least I know that mine is a 3.5, which is a good or whatever. But this is one advantage of CGC. You want a certain book, you want to make sure that you're not getting ripped off, and that the amount that you're willing to spend is actually going to give you something that's worth that money. Then yes, CGC is a good way to go for vintage books. Now, for modern books, I wouldn't recommend you go out and buy, let's say, I don't know, Dark Reign, The List, Avengers #1, CGC 9.8, even though it's an awesome book, but it's worth like, what, $5? And there might be a CGC 9.8 out there, and it'll sell for $30, but it'll cost you $20 to grade it. So there's stacks and stacks of books on eBay that are graded high, but they're just not worth having. No disrespect to anyone out there, but anyway. Now, I submitted a modern book just because they were cheaper to grade, but the book I submitted was hard enough to get raw. This is Spawn #1, black and white variant, which I lucked out on and found at a comic shop for 13 bucks on the wall because they get these for free. They don't know how much to charge for them. They charge 13 bucks. This is back in the day before the whole, if it's 1 out of 25, we charge $25. If it's 1 out of 100, it's $100. It's $1 a head. So, and this book's actually, September 1997, 12 years. Now, yeah, I hid the grade and stuff because I wanted to show you. This is my first CGC submission, so I am ecstatic. I'm incredibly happy with this. There's maybe 3 of these on eBay, 1 signed, 2 unsigned, and they sell between 1 to 3. They're for sale between 1 to 3 grand. They're not to say they've sold, but there was one that sold for 960, another one sold for about 400. This is because of the hype with McFarlane and Kirkman and their new book, Haunted, plus the recent interest in Spawn with issue 185, which I won't spoil for anyone. Go pick it up. It's a good book. But yeah, I mean, this was a limited variant there's next to no info of this book on the internet. I read that there was, if you look at the ratio of issues of #1 that came out, 2% of that is how many of this were made. But this was made like 4 years after issue 1 hit, because Image came out in 93, 94. So anyway, blah blah blah, long story short, I submitted a book and I lucked out. Now, this will motivate me to go through the rest of my collection and find stuff I think's worth submitting, but it's not to make a quick buck. It's just I like holding on to this stuff. It's the sentimental. There are only 3 on eBay, but there's 20 of these on the CGC census that have been graded at a 9.8. Now, for modern books, I've been told that you should avoid 9.4, 9.6, because if it's a modern book, technically it should be as near mint as possible if it just came out. This is considered a modern book. It's from the late 90s, and a 9.8 is usually the way to go. 9.9 is very hard to get, and a 10 is like, next to perfect. Am I saying it's perfect? It's next to impossible. But you can get a random book at a 10.0 and it'll sell for a lot of money. Not so much for the book itself, but because it's a perfect book by standards point of view. Anyway, so yeah, I'm gonna put my rant to a close real soon. I only have 4 CGC books, and these are the other 2. Now, I've shown these before, but again, for me, CGC is about guaranteeing that the vintage book I buy is of that particular grade. If I buy the book raw and you tell me it's very fine near mint because it looks that good to you, that's cool and all, but I'll still hold it up and look at it and make sure that what you're selling me is for real. But because a lot of these purchases are made over the internet, it's nice to have a normalized system that tells you, okay, I'm selling you an 8.0 here, See it for yourself. Alright, well, that's my rant on CGC. Thanks. Alright, peace. Bye.